Isabella Baumfree, also known as Sojourner Truth, was born in 1797 in Riften, New York. There weren't birth records for slaves back in the 1800s, so we don't know exactly when she was born. Isabella was first sold into slavery when she was 9 years old. She was sold to John Neely, a very abusive and cruel master. Later on, she was sold to John Dumont. 1810. John was very kind. Around 1815, Isabella fell in love with another slave, Robert, and their owners forbade it. They were caught, and Robert's owners beat him, and they never saw each other again. Around 1826, he told Isabella he'd set her free, but she had an injury. He claimed she had set him back. He kept her until later that year. She took her daughter Sophia and left to a friend's house. They stayed until the emancipation of slaves in New York was finalized. A year later, she found out her son had been sold by her old master, and she took this issue to the court. She won, making her the first African slave to win a case in court. In 1829 and the 1830s, she had a religious revelation and became a devout Christian. In 1843, she became a Methodist, and she changed her name to Sojourner Truth. In 1844, she decided to join the Northampton Association of Education and Industry. While in this group, she met Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd. Truth started making memoirs to a friend, and Lloyd published these and made it into a book. Truth spoke at her first women's rights convention in Massachusetts. Sojourner Truth is most known for the speech, "And I, a Woman." This speech she challenged racial inequality, and she made this while on a lecture tour with George Thompson. In 1864, she met President Lincoln and served as a counselor in the National Freedmen's Association, helping the emancipation in the West. A decade later, she spoke at a suffrage convention in the late 1860s. She settled in Battle Creek, Michigan, and spent the final years of her life there. She died November 26 of 1883. Dorothea Dix was born on April 4, 1802. She was an advocate for the mentally ill. She changed the way that mentally ill patients were treated and the perception of mentally ill patients, not just in the U.S., but all across the country. She created mental hospitals and also mental asylums that were across the United States and in Europe. She also came up with new treatments to help mentally ill patients. She wanted to do anything that she could do to help people all across the world who suffer from mental illnesses. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was born on November 12, 1815, in Johnstown, New York. She was an author, chief philosopher, and author of the women's rights and suffrage movement. Ever since she was a little girl, she knew that she wanted to be in the women's rights movement. In 1848, her, alongside Lucretia Mott, held their first women's rights convention. This convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York. She then wrote the Declaration of Sentiments, which is a book that basically states the rights that women and men share and that they should both be equal. In 1862, she moved to New York City and got involved in Civil War efforts. She then advocated for the 13th Amendment to end slavery. Elizabeth was very determined when it came to equality. She believed that everyone should be equal no matter what their gender or race is. Susan B. Anthony was an American social reformer and women's rights activist who played an important role in the women's suffrage movement. She wasn't a single-issue activist, and her less famous but still as important work with the temperance movement was very important. During the temperance movement, she promoted stronger liquor laws. Her distaste for drinking grew with her Quaker upbringing, which was her faith that didn't outlaw drinking but did frown upon it. During the time, she joined the Daughters of Temperance, which was a group that focused on strengthening liquor laws and drawing attention to the negative effects of heavy drinking. Along her journey, she was elected president of the Rosser branch of the Daughters of Temperance as her influence grew. At a related convention with the Sons of Temperance, Susan attempted to speak and was denied the floor and was told the women were invited to listen and learn only. This angered her, so she left and called a meeting founding the Women's State Temperance Society, which was also founded with fellow activist and friend Elizabeth Cady Stanton. The society's goal was to petition the New York State legislature to pass a law regulating and limiting the sale of liquor. A petition was performed and got 28,000 signatures, but the state dismissed the request because most of the signatures weren't from children. Susan never stopped fighting because she knew they could take on the task of changing the world. Anthony died on March 13, 1906, 14 years before women were given the right to vote, with the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920.